This is the Next Generation Researchers. We research things and bring you the facts as we see them. Today, we're not looking into conspiracy, but are we? We are looking into a civil war, but are we? Today, we will focus on a disaster that is unfolding in the Middle East. As the country of Syria loses more and more of its population, where are these people going? To answer this and many of other questions, we have assembled a real panel of experts. We have two schools from Lebanon who will take us to the refugee camp and explain about the problems that these people are experiencing. We have a school in Turkey that will talk about the refugees in that country, and we will then be joined by a school in Canada that has a very large percentage of their students from Syria. Finally, we will hear from an expert in the field of manipulation and deceit, an author of many different types of books, Dr. James Fetzer. Now, let us begin.
Okay. Now I'm starting. We divided our presentation into two subjects: population rights and basic needs of the refugees in Turkey, social, economical, and cultural impacts of refugees in Turkey. This is the graph of the Syrian refugees in Turkey between 2012 and 2017. At the beginning of the war in Syria, there were 170,000 refugees in Turkey in 2013. At the end of 2013, the number was climbed to 560,000. In the next year, it became 1,620,000. It kept increasing in the following 3 years. It was 2,300,000 in 2016, whereas it was 2,850,000 in 2017, and now there are about 3.5 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. In this table, we can see the Syrian refugees in Turkey divided into regions. As you can see, there are really few old Syrian refugees in Turkey, and the amount of 0 to 4-year-old children is pretty high. The graph of the refugees in Turkey on July 2016, according to the pie graph, 80% of refugees lived in Turkey on July 2016 were Syrians, and 87.5% of them were living in urban, whereas 12.5% of them were living in camps. But according to the records on July 2017, fewer than 8% of Syrian refugees were living in camps. Syrian refugees distribution among the cities in Turkey. This picture demonstrates Syrian refugee distribution among the cities in Turkey. There are 4 cities which host more than 300,000 Syrian refugees. Our city, Bursa, hosts between 100,000 and 300,000 Syrians. Syrians in Turkey, what are their status? Turkey adopted the open door policy according to the decision have been made as mutual with Syria to remove the visas for the refugees in 2009 and founded shelter for them in Hatay. As for refugee, Turkey is a country which signed Geneva Convention on the legal status of refugees and the additional protocol of 1967 geographical restraints. Accordingly, Turkey gives refugee status to the people from an European country if they are afraid of getting proceedings because of their race, nationality, religion, particular social group membership, or political thoughts. Applications from non-Europeans are being assessed with the UNHCR, and the ones who are chosen to be given the refugee status are settled in third countries through UNHCR. Turkey did not give the Syrian refugees status and has defined them as guests. However, the concept of guest has no provisions in the international law, so has the risk of arbitrary application towards the asylum seekers. Turkey from October 2011 declared temporary protection for Syrian guests as agreed by the Article 10 of the Ministry of Interior's 1994 regulation. This regime, which is compliant with the minimum international standards, includes the open door policy, doesn't force to go back, doesn't determine individual studies, and gives you a campus subsidies as well as the provision of the other basic services. After UNHCR stopped the individual registration and status determination process for the Syrian refugees, Disaster and Emergency Coordination Department, AFAD, and the Red Crescent, Kızılay, has undertaken the establishment and the coordination of the camps in Turkey, whereas registration of asylum seekers and identity distribution is coordinated by the asylum seekers in the cities have limited access to the assistance of local and international NGOs. Taking into account the criticism in this regard, the government has started to work for the benefit of the health services of the Syrian people outside the camp. The Ministry of Labor and Social Security is also continuing to work on granting a work permit for the Syrians to provide legal employment. However, there is no definite information that the Syrians can get a work permit. Syrians continue to work in the textile sector on constructions as seasonal workers with low wages and without insurance. Some of the rights of refugees in Turkey: free education. Syrian children are provided with the opportunity to continue their education in consequence of the steps taken with the cooperation of Ministry of National Education. Work for reaching children in Turkey are continuing uninterruptedly. Free of charge healthcare services. Turkey provides free of charge healthcare services and medicines to all registered Syrians in the country. Vocational training. 222,869 Syrians have acquired professions through various certificate programs in AFAD field centers, such as on foreign languages, using computer and carpet weaving. Work permit applications. Foreigners under temporary protection can apply to Labor Ministry for work permit after 6 months from the date they registered as under temporary protection status. Survey about Syrians' basic needs in Turkey. In order to provide better conditions for Syrian refugees, a survey about the basic needs of Syrian refugees in Turkey was conducted in recent years. 2014 refugees with different status were joined, and as a conclusion, it was learned what the refugees had and what they needed. Most of the refugees supply their nutritional needs either by working or from their neighbors' environmental aid. Also, the bigger percentage is pretty high. These people are the ones who don't want to work mostly. A large amount of Syrian refugees says that they can't eat enough food. This table demonstrates how Syrian refugees struggle with nutrition problems. Almost 65% of refugees live in rented houses. 21 plus 5% of them use empty houses, and 10% of them live in tents. Syrian refugees have various problems with housing. The most complained problem is bad conditions.
Wow.
Almost half of the refugees say that they need furniture in their houses, whereas 36% of them say they need houses or better ones. Most of the refugees have to wear the same. 25% of them is getting help from their neighbors and environment. Syrian refugees need winter clothes mostly. Refugees say that they can go to the hospitals and get treatment, but they can't afford medicine. Basically, they need medicine. 78% of children, teenagers, can't get educated. Different language is the biggest problem about education. They also can't afford their stationery needs. Although they live in bad conditions in Turkey, as they say, they don't want to go back to their homeland.
What is being done to meet the needs of refugees in Turkey? Physiological needs of refugees are mostly met by donations or with government support. Financial securities of Syrian refugees are usually guaranteed because the foreigners under temporary protection have the right to work in Turkey. There are also many organizations that people can donate to. Some of well-known organizations, Kızılay, Turkish Red Crescent Society. Kızılay is a part of IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent. AFAD, government-related organization. AFAD coordinates the services rendered to thousands of people in the sheltering centers through Afghan. Afghan won the best public services in 2015 given by United Nations. İHH, Humanitarian Relief Foundation, a non-governmental organization. İHH Coordination Center Hatay. It was built in 2013 and has storehouses 5,000 square meters and a bakery that produces 130,000 pita breads daily. İHH Humanitarian Relief Work in Syria. Kızılay has been helping Syrian refugees for almost 7 years. They provide food, water, shelter, clothing, and other supplies. There are many tents built by Kızılay in many cities of Turkey. Kızılay saving clothes. Turkish humanitarian agencies distribute food aid to some 1,500 families in northwestern Syria. Turkish Disaster and Emergency Management Authority, AFAD, the Turkish Red Crescent, Kızılay, both participated in the distribution of food aid to struggling families in the cities of Albab and Kabasım in the Aleppo. AFAD provides for refugees in need in Halep. Turkey responds to Syria crisis. Syrian children back in schools. Education of the Syrian children who refuge in Turkey has always been top priority. 80,742 children have been reintroduced to schools in Afat sheltering centers. Free of charge healthcare services. Turkey provides free of charge healthcare services and medicines to all registered Syrians in the country. Within the scope of the health services rendered to Syrian nationals, 953,406 operations have been carried out. 25,909,750 million outpatient services have been rendered. 143,390 hospital patients were treated. Vocational 222, 809 Syrians have acquired professions through various certificate programs in Afat refuge centers, such as in foreign languages using computer and carpet viewing. Social impact of Syrian refugees in Turkey. Difference of language, culture, and lifestyle make social adjustment difficult. Child workers are increasing. Ethnic and secularization is coming up. Formation is increasing. Alteration of demographic structure brings anxiety. Bad conditions and the fact that some of the refugees can get educated are possibly increasing in crime rates. Although there were some problems between refugees and locals in some territories, both communities developed a peaceful system in order to avoid any problems. Syrian people's adaptation period started 158 Syrians were born in Turkey. Subject of marriage with Syrians causes reaction, but on the other hand, it makes fusion of two communities. Syrian population's important part is kids and teenagers. They are growing up in Turkey. Economical effects of Syrian refugees in Turkey. When you look at Syrians' effects in economic way, you will see there are a lot of opportunities, but also risks too. Prices are increasing, and it's getting harder to find a house for rent. There are inflation increase in border cities. The rate of employment of illegal workers is increasing. Unfair competition between companies who employ illegal Syrian workers and who doesn't increase them. Local community believes that refugees are decreasing their job opportunities by working cheaper, but it's not. Refugees are generally working in places that where community doesn't want to work. So actually, manpower deficit is closing. Wage level is significantly decreasing. Buying humanitarian supplies and services to help Syrian people that will live in Syria and Turkey from local companies is an opportunity for food and textile companies. Syrian traders and investors that will have traded in Middle East countries and know this contribute and investment relations with these countries. Cultural impact of Syrian refugees in Turkey. Also, there are 3.5 million Syrian refugees. We see pretty few cultural changes in Turkey. Refugees are trying hard to adapt since most of them want to stay in Turkey long term. The biggest issue we are facing is that many artisans, stores, and restaurants came up with Arabic signboards in order to attract more people. There's a lot more to say about Syrian refugees in Turkey because many things have changed since they came. So we asked people and recorded the video.
Can you see the video?
We see a picture now. I don't see it playing yet.
Ne düşünüyorsunuz? Bence ülkemize yararlarından çok zararları var. Çünkü hani geliyorlar ve bir meslek sahibi olmadan bir ev kiralıyorlar mesela. Ev kirasını ödeyemiyorlar. Yani hem bizi zor durumda bırakıyorlar hem kendilerini zor durumda bırakıyorlar. Ülkelerinde savaş varken hani kendi ülkelerini savunmaları yerine buraya geliyorlar. Savaştan kaçıyorlar ve bizim askerlerimiz onları savunuyor. Bence bu hiç mantıklı bir şey değil. Böyle düşünüyorum. Teşekkür ederiz. Amca Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsun?
İyi düşünüyorum buraya geldiğinde ya. Kötü bir durum yok.
Senin için bir sorun yok değil mi?
Yok.
Tamam, teşekkür ederiz. Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Bunlar bizimki bunlarla bir şeyimiz yok hiç. Nereye gitsen, hastaneye de gitsen, nereye gitsen onlara bir öncelik tanınıyor. Biz yok, arka sıraflarda.
Teşekkür ederim. Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Suriyeliler bir insan her şeyden önce. Hicret etmek zorunda kalmışlar. Savaştan ülkelerini terk etmişler. Bundan sonra mağdur yardım etmek, onlara kucak açmak durumundayız. Yani başka bir şey. Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Ülkemize zararları ya da yararları var mı?
Zararı ya da yararı. Her insanın bireysel olarak bir takım yanlışları olabilir. Bu yanlışları kalkıp da bütün Suriyelilere söylemek doğru değildir. Bizim ayrıca genelde Türk geleneğinde bir şey vardır. Yardım etme duygusu. Biz diğer ülkeler gibi değiliz. Elbette ki onlara kucak açacağız. Tamam.
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Benim Mehmetçiğim orada savaşırken onlar ülkelerinden kaçtılar. Gitsinler onlar savaşsınlar. Sefa süreceklerine burada. Gitsinler onlar da savaşa katılsınlar. Niye kaçtılar buraya? Artık ortalık güzel değildi. Niye gitmiyorlar, terk etmiyorlar? Benim milletim aç. Onlara maaş bağlandı hepsi. Herkes tıkır tıkır maaşlarını alıyor. Burada açlık hadsinden kaldı insanlarda. Ne ayrıcalıkları var? Siyasi mi bu iş? Başka hiçbir şey yok.
Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Gereksizler. Daha çarşambaya dün bizim de iş koydular mahallemize. Öyle işte.
Teşekkür ederim. Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Ben çok kalabalıklar ve biraz rahatsız oluyorum bu durumda. Çünkü benim halkıma verilmeyen hakların onlara verildiğini düşünüyorum. Yani adım başı bir Suriyeli var ve ben bundan şikayetçiyim. Hakkında düşündüklerim bu kadar yani. Daha fazla bir şey varsa söyleyeyim.
Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz? Eğer yeterli derecede eğitim verildiği sürece bence yani, tabii ki yaşayabilirler. Kimseyi şey yapacak halimiz yok. Ben insanları yargılayıp dışlayan bir insan değilim. Fakat bilinçsiz insanlar oldukları için hani insan çevreye de çok fazla zararları oluyor zaman zaman. İnsanlara da zararları oluyor. Bence eğitildikleri sürece her yerde yaşayabilirler. Suriyeliler hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Suriyeliler hakkında tabii savaştan geldiler. Biraz sıkıntılı bir durum onlar için. Tabii hani bizim için de sorun oluyor bazen ama işte hani dilimizi bilmiyorlar, kültürümüze vakıf değiller ama yani onlara birazcık duyarlı olmalıyız ve yardım etmeliyiz bence bu zamanlarda. Birazcık destek olmalıyız.
So this is all our presentation. Thank you for watching.
Oh, thank you very much. That was very good. Can your camera work at all today or no?
No, unfortunately, we couldn't make it.
Okay. Would you be able to answer a couple questions? We got some time. Dr. Fetzer and myself can ask you a couple questions. Would that be okay?
We do have time. We'll try to answer them.
Okay. What did you learn from doing this?
I individually learned a lot from this presentation while preparing this. I actually didn't know that rights of Syrians and I mean what they do and what they have. I also learned that they, from this survey I showed you in the presentation, they really need a lot. I mean, their basic needs and stuff like that.
Dr. Fetzer, do you have any questions?
Well, I thought that was a wonderful presentation. It combined statistical analysis with personal interviews. It had breadth, it had depth. I'm immensely impressed with the support that's been provided to the Syrian refugees by Turkey. I thought that the students did an excellent job. This was a very fine presentation. And I personally learned a great deal about it, including, of course, that there are 3.5 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. That's a staggering number. But they seem to be coping well with the support of the Turkish government, which impresses me profoundly.
Yeah, and I was kind of interested. You said there were 275,000 Syrians that were born in Turkey. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
What will, if for example, if you keep on going and they never return back to Syria, could you have a problem eventually of having more Syrians not being acclimated to the Turkish culture?
Well, as I wrote in the presentation, they're trying to adapt us, but we see a lot of Arabic words around the city, especially in our city. There are lots of them. So, of course, we think that there will be some cultural changes, but I don't know what else.
Okay, in Bursa, how has your city changed from amount of Syrian refugees? Because I think in your presentation you said it's between 100,000 and 300,000. How's that changed?
As I told you, we see a lot of Arabic words in our city, and we see a lot of them. So at least 5% of Bursa is Syrian now, and although they're trying to learn Turkish, but they speak Arabic indeed. So we're having some conversation problems because of that, and any uneducated of them are being some problems in Bursa.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting.
Go ahead. Are there very many Syrian refugees in your school?
No, there isn't any.
Okay. And when do you foresee this problem to quit being a problem?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Okay, there was a lady that you interviewed, and they were saying about they wanted the Turkish army to come back from Syria and let the Syrians go back to Turkey. Is there a lot of resentment with some groups of people inside of Turkey that your army is sitting there still and our army is over there and the Syrians are there, or no?
Yes, I got it. So you're asking if there are many of those who are like that woman. So I don't think there are many of them. We don't see. Maybe 1 or 2% of population.
Okay.
Most likely we're looking warm to them.
And when they say they get free education, do they get to go to regular schools, or do they have schools in their camps, or how's that done for the poor children that need education?
According to our research, there are schools in camps, so they go to school, and when they apply to our school in urban cities,
Mm-hmm.
they can go freely.
Yeah, if they're living in the city, they would go to a regular school then, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now are you offering like we in the United States we have English as a second language. Do you have to start offering Turkish as a second language to help some of those people out? In other words, is the instruction going to be in Arabic or is the instruction going to be in Turkish?
Basically, they need to learn Turkish before starting school. So they get Turkish lessons free.
Wow, that's really good. Like Dr. Fetzer said, that was very, very good. We're going to be joined here, but it probably won't be by another 20 minutes, from a school from Lebanon. And they're going to tell you about how it's impacting Lebanon. What can you think? What would you tell other people across the world that may be listening to this at some point or another? What could you tell them that they could learn by trying to help out people in need, like Turkey's helping out Syria? What can other countries do?
I think they should be more warm about this topic, and they should not forget that they are people who escaped from war.
Yeah, that's vitally true. A lot of us we don't realize how much trouble they are going through, and when you start seeing those large amounts of tents and a large amount of numbers of people, it's just really hard living halfway across the world to get your mind around it as much as it would be living close.
So we basically say they should accept them too. I mean, other countries, or help Turkey or Lebanon or other Middle East countries economically to help them.
Yeah. What is your opinion of the United States' role in this particular situation? You think we're doing enough or not enough, or what?
I personally didn't research it, so I don't have something to say about it.
Okay, I think Dr. Fetzer is going to talk about that when we get done here a little bit. But there's a lot of political back and forth here in the United States over all kinds of stuff, but one of them has to do with refugees. And it's really, I thought, was fascinating. I don't know about you, Dr. Fetzer, you might make a comment. Some of the comments they're talking about refugees undercutting salaries and stuff are very similar to, like in my part of the country here, people coming from across Central America or else parts south that are coming undocumented and working for cheaper too. So I guess the problems are going to be intrinsic no matter where you go. What do you think, Dr. Fetzer?
Well, I thought Turkey was showing a degree of largesse, welcoming support that was stunning to me. Americans, I think, as a population in general, would be far more conflicted about receiving and supporting such a staggering number of refugees. We do have the controversy, especially with the Trump administration, about illegal immigration. And it includes, of course, coming from Mexico, Central, South America, but mostly Mexico, where agribusiness has benefited from cheap labor and where the government has inappropriately punished the workers who are seeking a better life rather than the big business that is making profits off of their labor. So that it seems to me the United States has yet to work out an appropriate set of policies for dealing with the issue. Trump, of course, has talked about erecting an enormous wall between Mexico and the United States. I'm very impressed that Turkey is being so receptive and sympathetic and supportive of the Syrian refugees, whereas I shall explain the problem by and large has arisen because of the United States intervention in the Middle East, where we are acting on behalf of Israel. It's a complex situation, but where we bear the lion's share of responsibility for creating the situation and circumstances that have produced this staggering number of refugees from the Middle East who are simply seeking safety and security, which Turkey, and I admire Turkey for doing this, is providing to them far beyond what I had heretofore imagined.
Yeah, echo all those sentiments. I think that the Turkish government, the Turkish people are doing a really good job in that. And we're going to find out a little bit later Lebanon's situation is, because Lebanon, 50% of their population is now refugees. So that they have not as many, but they have about 1.5 million, and or a little bit over that, maybe 2 million, and they don't have much larger population themselves. So this problem is greatly, and if the people from Canada join us too, you're going to see this problem is really, really a tremendous problem that many of us here do not know. Okay, we just dropped the Lebanon for some reason. They're going to, I guess they're called back in. They are supposed to be ready in about 10, 15 minutes. Any more things from Turkey, please?
So you can ask questions. We'll try to answer them.
Okay. When describe to Dr. Fetzer your education that you're getting there at your school, because it's really strong. Tell us a little bit about your school day and your classes and stuff. Okay.
All right. In high school, we start school at 9 a.m. and finish at 4 p.m. We get 8 lessons. Each of them are 40 minutes. There are 4 grades in high school, so we need to change away either humanities or science lessons after the half of high school. I mean, in 11th grade, we choose a way, and I should say that when you choose science, it's very hard because you learn almost everything about chemistry, physics, or biology, maths. So it's hard.
Okay. And when you graduate, what type of university or what type of career do you want to go to?
I want to study economics, but not in Turkey.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about the class that Ms. Petal's teaching. What does she teach for you guys? Or how did you get involved in doing this project?
She's an English teacher in our school, and she's been doing this kind of projects, especially Erasmus projects in Europe for a very long time. So our group wanted to join this kind of projects. So because we think these projects can help us in our lives, and we actually learn a lot by researching, by listening, by joining all these projects. And the island teacher is connecting us to you or these projects.
Okay. Great. Now, what would you think what do you think is most surprising when somebody says you're from Turkey? What are some things that people are really surprised that you do or believe or act like? Or because when they say, like, I'm from Texas, they think we're on horses, or or I'll wear cowboy clothes or something. What would be some things that most people would be shocked to find out about Turkey?
When we say we're from Turkey, they all know us with our warm heart. I mean, helping to other people, and of course, kebab. They all know about it.
And also, some people assume that we are Arabic, even though we are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that the Turkish people came from China as well, so it's kind of strange. Now, do you have that really large oak tree in the middle of Bursa? The tree that Osman originally before when you settled there? It's like in a cafe or something. Is that really there or no?
Yes, it is. The first, I mean, I think the first 5th sultans are laying there here. The first 5th or 6th.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Dr. Fetzer is probably one of the most renowned people I know as far as intellectual. He taught in college and has written many books on stuff. Do you think that, I'm just going to ask a question I maybe shouldn't ask, but do you think that the Europeans were behind the Ottoman Empire overthrow at the very end, or no?
Oh, that's a fascinating question, Mike.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I've done a lot of study and in that particular area, but I was just wondering what your feelings were about the last emperor and when it goes into the Turkish Republic. Would you think that the Europeans were just evil people that got rid of everything right before the oil? Okay, let's see what they say. I'm sorry.
I want to tell you something.
Can you answer or no? I don't know if Turkey is still there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know whether my English skills will be enough to.
Don't worry, speak in Turkish. It's just fine.
Understand what I'll mean. In that time, Britain's French people and other European countries were going India and Africa, taking their stuff and selling in their country. So when it comes to Ottoman Empire, it was struggling with uneducated people, and they weren't become. I'm nicer. I don't know what to say. So I don't think what European countries did was evil, because when we think about 20th century, 19th century, the policy of all countries was like that.
Yeah, you're being very politically very nice. So I appreciate that. And I won't ask any more, but I think you could make a strong case for a very heavy-handed political operation ever since the knowledge of the vast wealth of the Ottoman Empire from about the 1870s on, and you could see that there was a heavy manipulation of the major European and even Russian empires to try to take over or to crash the Ottoman Empire into areas in which they could desirably take a place. But that's for another session. But I really do appreciate what you've done on that. That was very interesting. I had no idea. It's one thing to see statistics. It's another thing to see pictures. And it's another thing to actually get to hear from people, especially young people like yourself, or even people on the streets that you all did. And with the subtitles and stuff, that is really, really, you guys went way above. And I wish more people would be like yourselves to do things like this. This is really kind of a thrill to see this, because this is something I've had deep in my heart about trying to get more people to do original research, especially young people. And we're doing it with different things here, but we're having stuff happen right before us in live time, and you guys really should be congratulated.
Thank you very much, Michael. And we also want this to, we want other people to research these kind of things and present to
other
us.
Yeah, you know, I tell a story, and I can't remember it. We were working with 3 different schools in Turkey, and many of my students that I teach are non-English speaking students. And we had a contest. This was many years ago because we were using Skype, but probably in the early 2001, 2002 era. And I think it was in Ankara, the capital, but there was a lady who was a teacher. And we were communicating like we're communicating here. And we, in 6 weeks, from the first time we talked, in 6 weeks, those kids in Turkey were speaking better English than my students were.
Yes,
And I don't know how you learn English so well. I know how you learn so well, but how are languages taught in Turkey to where I'm amazed that so many people can speak languages so well? How many languages can you speak?
Only 2, Turkish and English, and most of the Turkish people can't speak English.
Okay, and when do you learn English normally?
We have a choose in high school to choose our second foreign language, German or French, but usually German.
Okay. Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Sorry?
Sprechen Sie Deutsch? You speak German?
We don't.
Okay, good. No problem. If you need to go, what time do you need to go exactly?
We don't have a certain time.
Okay, good. Do you have anything that you would like to ask about when it comes to? We're going to do 2 more. I was going to tell you, teacher, we're doing 2 specials this month about World War II, and the role of Roosevelt and different things like that, which is really kind of a strange deal. And I think Dr. Fetzer is going to talk a little bit today about Israel. And I had no idea until some of my students were researching this, is that, you know, there is a compartment of people that would believe that Israel has been involved in a couple of political assassinations, and I had no idea. It even goes back to Roosevelt. So this could be potentially very interesting when you start looking at geopolitical things and how things actually really work out. So understanding it becomes very, very important. I think we're going to try to see if the people from Lebanon are about ready, and then we'll get back. So everybody hold right a second. Let me try to see about Lebanon. Are you ready yet? Lebanon, I still think they got about 5 minutes. Dr. Fetzer, do you have anything other you would like to add for a couple of minutes? Oh, wait, Lebanon, you ready yet? Would you like to come in?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can we start?
Yes, go ahead. You're being joined by a school in Bursa, Turkey. We should be joined later by a school in Canada and Dr. Fetzer and myself. Go ahead.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, about an hour would be great. And Dr. Fetzer has his remarks. Go ahead. I'm recording.
War doesn't determine who is right, only who is left and how is he left. I think the new Syrian generation is lost. We are Manara Jabal Amel High School representing Lebanon in model diplomacy about Syrian refugees in Lebanon.
I am the Minister of Refugees. Although Lebanon is not a party to the convention relating to the status of refugees of 1951 or its 1967 protocol, and has not adopted any domestic law specifically addressing the status of refugees, it has been receiving huge numbers of displaced persons since 1948. Lebanon hosts around 400,000 Palestinian refugees and 10,000 non-Palestinian displaced persons registered with UNHCR. 80% of them are from Iraq and the rest from another 20 different countries. Despite increasing economic, social, demographic, political, and security challenges, Lebanon has shown exceptional commitment and solidarity and has welcomed around 1.1 million refugees being war-torn Syria registered by UNHCR. In fact, they are 1.5 according to the Lebanese government and a number of local NGOs. Such number is very high for a country like Lebanon. Population does not exceed 4.4 million people. Moreover, an estimated 35,000 Lebanese have also returned from Syria since 2010. 5% in a country already suffering from weak services and infrastructure.
But as a result of the absence of a national refugee law, a memorandum of understanding MOU was signed between the UNHCR and the government of Lebanon in September 2003. The MOU apparently provides a method for the issuing of temporary residence permits to person seekers under the term of the MOU. The UNHCR issues a temporary residence permit normally for 3 months, extended to 6 to 9 months, allowing UNHCR to find a durable solution for the refugee in question. Back to Syrian displaced persons. In 2011, when Lebanon opened its border generously to Syrian families fleeing the conflict, Lebanon's communities have opened their schools, their clinics, and even their homes to hundreds of thousands of Syrians who have fled their country and, in many cases, lost everything. They supplied shelters, generous welcomes, services, and support despite the fact that their own needs. After 7 years, we are relieved and squeezed.
They're having a little bandwidth problem, but we'll be going back and they'll be back on.
With no serious termination of such war in Syria. The Lebanon communities have arrived at a critical point on the social, economic and security states.
In 2014, the UNHCR was given clear instructions to control the passage of people from Syria as bona fide refugees. Since then, it is the Minister of Social Affairs tasked the right to enter the country. Residency costs $300, and many refugees can't pay it. Lebanon has thus become the country hosting the largest displaced population per capita.
And the Lebanese social and economic growth. It deepened poverty and intensified pre-existing serious development problems in Lebanon. The World Bank estimates that Lebanon has incurred losses of $13.1 billion since 2012, of which $5.6 billion related to 2015 alone. How can Lebanon secure a decent life for displaced Syrian families and face economical consequences of such destructive conflict in Lebanon? Livelihoods in Lebanon have been degrading due to many causes. First, farmers are unable to export their products because the border is closed and the route is unsafe. In other words, the overall land export processes in Lebanon has been deteriorated because export routes all cross in Syria. So people relied on other means, air and sea means, that increase the cost of import and reduce the cost of export. As a result, both Lebanese and poor families of displaced Syrians are unable to secure their basic needs from the Syrian conflict. Second, constraints related to residency and labor policies and their implementation, as well as challenging market conditions, have also exposed displaced Syrians to illegal and exploitative labor. Overcrowding among displaced Syrians increased
from 18% in 2015 to 22% in 2016.
The house market means that the most helpless have limited access of displaced Syrians live in substandard buildings and 17% in informal settlements, with the 12% of all displaced shelters ranked as being in dangerous condition. Moreover, the more disadvantaged have now concentrated in areas already had lower labor market and higher unemployment rates before the crisis. The youth unemployment rate, 34%, was already alarmingly high before the crisis, even by regional standards, resulting in increased rates of migration among young Lebanese. For those who were a large proportion has been working informally in secure working conditions. Finally, while poverty in Lebanon was primarily concentrated in small pockets in the suburbs of large towns, poverty in rural areas remained particularly active.
Socioeconomic problems increased to an emergent situation. According to UN reports, it increased in the levels of violence against children and women. In addition, there is an increased harmful practices such as child marriage and engagement of children, including armed violence, as well as a higher risk of traffickers hunting extremely poor populations living in suburbs. The GOL constantly reaffirms in commitment to combat violence against children and women, in accordance with the applicable international and national laws. Joint efforts between the partners and Lebanon are needed in order to remedy the situation. Around 20% of Syrian refugees are identified as persons with specific needs. At least 78% of Syrians registered as refugees with UNHCR are women and children who are exposed to violence, who take care of their children alone, require additional support such as catch assistance and programs that protect women from different types of abuse and violence.
I'm the Minister of Work. Syrians have been coming to work in Lebanon, and the number of Syrians who work in the 19th was estimated to between 4,000. Also, according to the ILO, an estimated number of 3,000 Syrian workers were located in Lebanon before the outbreak of the Syrian crisis. Before the crisis, Syrians worked according to the Lebanese labor code. Foreign workers required a work permit within 10 days of entry, which should give them access to social security, the right to minimum wage and security protection. Since the outbreak of the Syrian crisis, the government of Lebanon relied on ad hoc policies. Recently, the Lebanese government issued a decision depriving the Syrian refugees of the right to work. Moreover, the government considered that the displaced lose their humanitarian refugee status the moment they start working, as they already benefit from UN for their families. According to 2016 vulnerability assessment for Syrian refugees, Syrian labor force is mainly concentrated in the construction sector, 33%, agriculture activities, 22%, services, 26%, trade and shops, 6%, and the cleaning, 6%.
Underemployment is predominant as Syrian workers are on average employed for 14 out of 30 days, 11. Men are struggling to find economic opportunities that enable them to earn a regular income in Lebanon and are facing acute physical insecurity and a high level of discrimination. Other family members such as women, but also children, have had to make up for the lack of fulfilling household chores. Many Syrian women have had to work to financially provide for their families.
Women have been able to get more jobs in the informal sector, such as fitting trading, seasonal agricultural work, and cleaning. Child labor among Syrian refugees in Lebanon is also critical. And because of the prevalent gender norms, more boys are working than girls, including in services such as electrical, motor and barber shops, restaurants, supermarkets, as well as in construction and agriculture. In contrast to boys, girls working both girls and boys are vulnerable to mistreatment and violence.
Under the Ministry of Shelter, in most parts of Lebanon, the high influx of Syrian increased competition for low-cost housing and increasing rent prices and has reached the limit of adequate and affordable shelters. The large majority of displaced Syrians are living in increasingly harsh conditions and facing shrinking opportunities to generate income. The percentage of displaced Syrians who are socioeconomically poor has climbed to 52%, an ever-growing group for whom even low rents are increasingly difficult to reach. A large percentage has been forced to resort to residing in overcrowded or substandard shelter conditions, such as garages, work sites, unfinished buildings, and collective shelters. Many displaced often reside in unfinished structures or shelters that groups in high density areas. In addition, an increasing number of families are squeezed into overcrowded apartments. They also lack basic services like water and sanitation, and their shelters are not properly equipped for adverse weather conditions, as some of the informed settlements, often located on agricultural lands originally intended to accommodate Syrian agriculture workers, have extended both in number and in size. They are no more perceived by the Lebanese communities. Shelter assistance control be limited only to these displaced from Syria, but must include other poor groups affected by the Syrian crisis, such as poor Lebanese, Palestinian refugees from Syria, PRS, and Palestinian refugees from Lebanon, PRL, the latter of whom host most of the PRS in their camps, adjacent areas and gatherings, but still with no official strategy on where how to house this huge number of refugees. The Lebanese government refuses the nation of establishing formal refugees camp. With time, already crowded local Lebanese communities were no longer able to host any more refugees. Refugees themselves could not afford paying rents anymore, especially as those rents kept rising in line with the rising market's demand. This caused the formation of informed tent settlements, ITS, in Bekaa, Arsal, and North Lebanon. As a result of the pressing need, the Union of Refill and Development Association in Lebanon took the initiative to launch its shelter program with the aim providing refugees with the decent and safe housing within collective shelters equipped with basic services and infrastructure. The shelter program is known for providing shelters for 2,474 Syrian refugees across Lebanon, distributing over 40 shelter centers, which include 3,656 residential units in Arsal, Bekaa, Akkar, Saida, Shaba, and Beirut.
Maintenance and other services provided for shelter centers include periodic renovation of houses and tents, as well as providing monthly needs, spraying pesticides to prevent insect, processing camps for winter through strengthening tents against to prevent flood and drain penetrations, as well as digging trenches to collect flood water and prevent formation of swamping that might hinder the movement of refugees and cause damage.
I am the Ministry of the Social Affairs. Despite the Lebanese government and the international community efforts of food insecurity and is an issue that severely affected Lebanese Syrians and Palestinian refugees from Syrian PRS. Their suffering is increasing each year. Also, the percentage of people who are employing negative food-related coping strategies increased from 28% in 2014 to 61% in 2016. 85% of them depend on borrowing money. The number who got $435 per month for a whole household of the members has doubled since 2014, reaching 52% in 2015, while 70% fall below the poverty line. $3.84 per person per daily. Consumption of the nutrient-rich, healthy dairy products and eggs has fallen and was replaced by a higher consumption of fats and sugar. Infants and young child feeding practices continue to remain inadequate for almost all children. 96%. These issues is dietary will result micronutrient deficiencies among displaced people.
Moreover, food assistance activities have been reduced, while needs have remained the same and have increased. A funding shortage forced the World Food Program (WFP) to reduce the e-card value from $27 to $19 per person per month. Finally, WFP was only able to provide $13.5 per person due to severe funding shortage. Have reduced their daily meals and focused on less expensive foods. Fundings and funding constraints also banned the implementation of non-food assistance activities because they depend on food assistance and limited access to income, exposing such a huge number of persons to food insecurity and inevitable.
For example, securing food has fallen from 25 to 11 due to high dependence on food assistance and limited access to income. Scoring the highest percentage of food insecurity is revealed by UNRWA. Also, national organizations have provided food assistance to nearly a million people and supported agricultural sector, yet the sector will continue to address food insecurity according to food security sector. Houses which are headed by females 19% in 2017 compared to 17% in 2016 continue to be worse off than their male-headed ones. They are less food secure, have severe conditions. Thank you.
I'm the Ministry of Stability. In 2013 national survey addressing Lebanese perception toward the Syrian crisis, 52% of the interviewees believe that displaced Syrians are threatening national stability and security. A solid 98% presume Syrian refugees are taking jobs from the local population, and 50% that the refugees are benefiting from financial aid in unfair manner, and mounting security concerns are affecting all the susceptible people. In 2014, the prospect periods of having a relapsing condition were confirmed when radical armed groups associated with the claim to be Islamic State and Al-Nusra Front arrived to Lebanon to displace its communities, assault Lebanese armed forces, and highest worries around national stability. A series of security accidents led to the engagement of the Lebanese armed forces with these groups. But the welcoming attitude of the Lebanese population has been key in peacefully managing at the community and village level. Strong continued engagement is required by all stakeholders to support and build on existing local public institution, over 1,000 and 1,213 social development centers, and a vibrant local civil society has been established to maintain social stability.
The crisis is also affects individual Lebanese who feel less safe and consider that the presence of displaced Syrians poses a security threat. Displaced Syrians feel less safe due to their concerns about differences in traditions and in gender rules. These perceptions have slowly eroded entirely positive community relations, with most Syrians reporting a degradation of their situation and not feeling welcome anymore. More generally, the context of Lebanon often worsens divisions along identity lines, even more so with non-Lebanese. And Lebanese are afraid of the prolonged presence of displaced Syrians that will ring on the Lebanese sectarian balance.
I am the Minister of Interior Affairs. The Lebanese government shouldered the protection and assistance to persons displaced from Syria, but dealing with the protection risks and concerns is complex because it is related to political, economical, environmental, and other factors. Moreover, the humanitarian needs outpaces the capacity of nations fragile and apply polarized politics and specific risks related to basic needs of shelter, water, and hygiene, livelihoods, health, education, among others. Although Syrians believe that lack of legal residency affects their safety, 67% of displaced Syrians without a valid legal residency, according to a recent study. Those parents are not able to move out of the area they are living in freely. Also, according to UNHCR statistics, over 60,000 Syrian children have been born in Lebanon to refugees registered with UNHCR since the beginning of the crisis, but nearly 70% of them do not have a registered birth certificate with the competent Lebanese authorities. In addition, the lack of civil documentation, divorce, marriage is scarce, so also due to fees that are often unaffordable, limited legal protection is available for women and girls in such cases, since without official documentation of the marriage, legal action such as care of children becomes impossible. The consequences of irregular legal status can be many risks such as arrest, severe limitations of freedom of movement, limited access to livelihoods, employment, risks of exploitation, and access to essential services.
Lack of legal representation, awareness, and irregular legal status complicate access to justice and remedies for these and other rights violations. Children, according to the UNICEF Lebanese estimation, around 630,000 Syrian refugee children, 170,000 Lebanese children, and 120,000 Palestine refugee children are affected by the Syrian crisis. They are in need of protection and inclusion. In total, 1,220,000 children are in need of basic services in Lebanon. The crisis has increased the risk of violence, exclusion, exploitation for children. Without the protection and basic services, an entire generation of children could be lost. And heavy burden has been placed upon the delivery of these services in particular because poor host communities and refugees often rely on the same access points and resources for basic services. Female protection. In Lebanon, Syrian women, girls, and boys are at risk of violence due to displacement, separation from families, and limited access to services. Violence, early marriage have been identified among displaced persons. Lack of legal representation and irregular legal status complicate access to justice and remedies for these and other rights violations. There are various protection concerns in informal settlements, including exploitation, labor conditions involving even women, safety concerns for children in particular in settlements have been raised.
I'm the Minister of Health. The arrival of 1.2 million refugees in Lebanon has added a new challenge for the Lebanese health system, which relies heavily on private sector. In May 2013, due to the high costs of healthcare in Lebanon and reduction of international funding and emergency care to cover a huge number of refugees, access to primary health care across Lebanon for displaced persons aged 5 non-governmental organizations, NGO partners. In addition to the state provision maintained by the Ministry of to LP 5,000 per consultation, 100% of the cost of medicines under a program provided by a Lebanese charitable organization. This includes those under 5 years and over 60 years of age, disabled people, pregnant women, and nursing mothers. Refugees who require other kinds of care, such as hospital, must go to a network of 60 hospitals across Lebanon, public and private, that works with the UNHCR system, with the exception of a life-threatening emergency where this is not possible. For those that meet UNHCR's criteria for hospital care, 75% of treatment costs are covered, with the remaining 25% as well the cost of medicines to be covered by the individual, unless they meet UNHCR's poorest criteria or victims of torture or sexual or gender-based violence, in which case 100% of costs are covered. According to the 2000 vulnerability assessment of Syrian refugees, 27% of Syrian displaced population reported at least one member with a specific health, chronic disease 13%, permanent disability 3%, temporary disability or another issue. 70% of displaced reported a child needing care in the month prior to the survey. Almost half, 47.5% of Palestinian refugees from Syria have at least one member suffering from a chronic condition. 66% of PRS had an acute illness in the last 6 months.
Displaced Syrian primarily seek care of acute infection and communicable diseases, chronic condition, poor living condition of displaced in Lebanon, including measles, mumps, and polio. Free routine vaccination is needed for around 50% of Lebanese children and 100% of displaced children, especially those which reduce habitats. And severe respiratory infection and communicable diseases due to the crowded of unsuitable shelters. Patients with cancer and chronic renal failures may require hospital care, which is not currently funded. Among displaced Syrian and PRS it's estimated that around 800 cases of cancer needed to be treated every year, and an estimated 200 patients are needed of ongoing kidney treatment. Mental health and physical and psychological disability should be taken into consideration. So limited funds are available for ensuring equitable provision of health services in order to meet essential health needed at the primary level. Consequently, access to healthcare, at least 78% of Syrians regarded as refugees with the UNHCR are women and children. Many bear psychological scares of the damaging experience and urgently need some form of support. Displaced Syrian families spend an average of 18% of income on health. UNRWA covers 99% for Palestinians.
Before Syrian crisis, Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health had a budget deficit with delayed payments to contract to private hospitals is estimated at $800 million, with a significant burden on the financial system of many hospitals as a result. This situation has deteriorated due to the influx of Syrian who constitute almost 1/3 of the people living in Lebanon. The Ministry of Health declared that our commitments to public hospitals for the hospitalization of the citizens from Syria has accumulated since 2011 to reach $21 million. It is too high to bear because it certain underfunding called also bankrupt thereby affecting access for both of displaced and hosting communities. Social stability could be adversely affected by rising tensions due to competition for scarce, serious and health.
I'm the Minister of Education. According to UNHCR, around 477,000 displaced Syrian children and 10,900 children have a right to access education. Such a huge number has increased the demand for educational services in terms of numbers, needs, and quality. Covers 30% of the population who are economically vulnerable. 70% of Lebanese students enroll in private and semi-private schools. Most of preschoolers go to private or semi-private. Only 19% go to public school. To fulfill such basic human right, in 2014, the Ministry of All Children with Education, RACE, in response to the Syria crisis, and builds upon the No Lost Generation strategy and the stabilization framework developed by the World Bank, UN, and GOL. The RACE plan commits governments and partners to providing 200,000 school-age displaced Syrian access to quality learning opportunities in safe and protective environments by 2016.
Despite all industrious efforts, 48% of refugee children ages from 6 to 14 were found to be out of school. The number of children enrolled drops after age 14, so many are not able to continue education due to their socio-economic situation, where parents are not able to cover transportation costs, security concerns, or absence of gender segregation system, lack of single-gender school in Lebanon, need for food, especially when WFP reduces assistance. A report recently published by WFP demonstrates an increase in child labor as a result of the cut in food assistance. Based on interviews conducted by the child protection sector for 700 street-based children, these street-based children are predominantly Syrian refugees, 70%, and live in informal settlement, where community leader or shawish refuse to allow children to go to school. In rural areas, these children increasingly seem being engaged in the agriculture sector. The second important cause is overage or discouraged. Others have also witnessed serious acts of violence and are in need of psychosocial support. Other restrictions for school enrollment are foreign languages leading to difficulties in learning, psychosocial welfare of children, corporal punishment, abuse and violence cases reported such as early marriages for girls, and the constant movement of families from a place to another.
Although second shift attendance increased the enrollment of displaced Syrian in public primary schools, it does not solve the problem due to long period of teaching hours of experienced teacher and hiring new inexperienced teachers another time. It is necessary to mention that UNRWA accommodates for 31,646 Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, PRL children, and 6,427 Palestinian refugees from Syrian PRS children in 68 schools. To deal with the complexity of such dilemma, in 2015, CERD developed a condensed basic education curriculum for grades 1 to 9 from existing curricula with a specific learning methodology. The ALP pilot started in July 2015 and was designed for 10,000. Additional opportunities are needed for children who are not ready to access formal education because they lack basic literacy and numeracy skills, either because of lack of access to formal schools in their area of residence or because they are adolescents with specific needs who cannot be integrated in primary schools. Non-formal education opportunities should therefore also serve to reach those children. Lebanese and international non-governmental organizations have been striving to fill the gap and to eliminate the legal, financial, and language barriers preventing refugee children from getting education.
I am the Minister of the Humanitarian Resolution to Stop Violence in Syria. Communities inside Lebanon have reached a critical point. Public services are overwhelmed, economic growth has weakened, and unemployment is rising at record rates. As social tension grows, Lebanon is concerned to protect its fragile stability. The potential risk of a deteriorating situation were underlined this year, and extremist armed group linked to the Al-Nusra Front and the so-called Islamic State entered Lebanon to attack its communities and armed force. The generous Lebanese are hosting an estimated additional 1.5 million displaced people as a result of the max influx of refugees. Sharing their land, their schools, their water resources, and health centers are poor communities. It's well-known fact that before Syrian crisis, 25% of the Lebanese population lived below the upper poverty line of $4 per day. After crisis, the World Bank estimated that an additional 170,000 Lebanese would fall into poverty by 2014 and a percent increase in unemployment.
Poor Lebanese and displaced Syrians are competing for jobs. Syrians accept low wage and work illegally. Depleted resources, the high cost of living in Lebanon put displaced persons in difficult situation, and it is more difficult for those who do not have legal residency. Being unable to secure their daily basic needs exposes them to exploitation and human rights violation. Peacekeeping mission in Syria is the first step in encountering human rights violation. By peace only they can help people to attain the requirement of decent life. General Security Council and the United Nations should secure safety because safety is the first demand in human rights.
I am the Prime Minister. I do like to tell you the lemon story to let Syrians know the importance of communication and collaboration before it is too late. Once a mother wanted the lemon in the fridge to make cake, while a daughter wanted it to make mask for her skin. Because she had an important meeting, they fought each other and started pulling the lemon and creating mess in their home. Suddenly, the father woke up to see the big mess inside home and his wife and daughter pulling the lemon. He stopped them and suggested to cut the lemon into two pieces, but both of the mother and her daughter refused because it is not enough. Each one needed all of it. Then he asked them sit and speak with each other to see who urgently need that lemon. The mother shouted, I want it to make cake. It is Sunday. All markets are closed. I like I like the taste of its skin and daughter shouted, I need it because I have to make my mask. This juice make my skin soft. The father took a deep breath and said, my wife needs the skin and my daughter needs the bulb. They said yes. So he said, no need to fight. You may damage the lemon and lose it both of you. You take the skin and give your daughter the bulb. How the United Nations play the role of father and push Syrians to talk to each other before it's too late. What is the solution of this largest humanitarian disaster in this century? Stop sending weapons to Syria. This phrase summarizes the real solution of the Syrian humanitarian crisis caused by the crazy war. Stop sending weapons to the Syrian leaders to stop the war and facilitate the return of millions of Syrian refugees to their cities, towns, and homes, and put an ending to the suffering in the refugee camps.
At the beginning of war, Lebanon opens minister. At the beginning of war, Lebanon opens its door to Syrian to protect them. After 7 years, we are caught between assisting the refugees, but I also want to prevent them from permanently resettling here. We are afraid that years pass and the story Palestinian repeats itself, and their case stays hanged in the United Nations. For the two-state solution in the Middle East, Syria is for Syrians who used to live in dignity, enjoying their own resources, so the international community should help them seriously return to their homeland. First, the solution is to stop sending weapons to the Syrian interior and thus stop the war and going to a political solution which offers the return of millions of Syrian refugees to their cities, towns, and homes and put an ending to the suffering in the refugee camps. Second, economic sanitation by Europe, Canada, and USA affected the Syrians negatively because it affected their economy. Third, UNHCR should intensify efforts toward states member to increase the humanitarian admission or other forms of admission. Maintaining human rights for refugees is to help them return instead of helping them to stay in camps that lack the least requirements of decent life. Fourth, Syria government should call citizens to return, especially to safe areas, and international community should provide more support to self-reliance activities for Syrian in order to ensure that they are less dependent on assistance to be and able to rebuild their country. Fifth, more social, psychological, and economic program addressing Syrian the teenager and out of school youth should be intensified. Additional funding should be allocated for supporting job placement and expanded vocational training programs to empower them. Six, conflict resolution programs are a must for Syrians to resolve their problems peacefully.
Peace is essential prerequisite for the protection of women and children, and for making a start to defeat hunger, especially among the victims of war. The main and final solution to the conflict in Syria will be through diplomacy and dialogue. United Nations Security Council should urgently promote durable political solutions. Security Council should urge G8 to stop supplying weapons and related material to any side of the conflict because that supply will fuel the conflict and could lead to the prolongation of the fighting and further humanitarian suffering. Innocent Syrians are gravely concerned about their homeland and living in dignity, and they urge the United Nations to strongly stop financing terrorism. After the crisis in Syria, there is a lack of good after destroying an infrastructure that affects the food producing industry in Syria. WFP have made every effort that increase the amount of food for Syria inside Syria. The regional spillover of the humanitarian crisis is threatening the stability of Lebanon, with a rise in economic, political, and sectarian tensions. Middle East has been suffering from it. Recent days, the Security Council has been working to end violation against children in armed conflict. In the conflict that is now taking place in Syria, children's rights has been violated in a manner that the country never witnessed before. All the high-ranking achievements of Syrian country related to child rights has been lowered to an unsatisfactory degree. Syria should know well that it is not a war for democracy, it is the war for destroying the economy or their land, because poverty and democracy can't stay together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, done. This is the last one.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have any question?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a question from Turkey first. Turkey, before you leave, did you have a question? If not, I know that when the solution speech that you had was really good, it was kind of, we couldn't get because of the bandwidth. How many refugees did you say were in Lebanon right now?
How many refugees? Say that. Would you please repeat?
Yeah. How many Syrian refugees are there in Lebanon right now?
1.5. Yeah. Hold on. Come. Yes, take it.
In Lebanon, there are more than 1.5 million Syrian refugees.
And how large is Lebanon, just a regular population in Lebanon?
2.3. The population in Lebanon is 4.5.
Okay, so you have about 30% of the people are refugees, correct?
Yes.
And how long can you maintain that amount of support coming out of your country without a lot of help?
What? Can you repeat?
Okay. If you are allowing a third of your nation to be refugees, I mean, a third of your country's refugees, how long is it before you really are in dire straits to keep on helping these people? I mean, you depend on a whole lot of outside help, correct?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What is happening to if you don't get aid from other countries, what happens to the refugees in Lebanon? You can't support them forever, can you?
United Nations can't support for them forever.
Right. Yeah. How long? Okay. How close are the nearest refugee camps to your school?
Can you repeat, please?
Yeah. How close are the the refugee camps to your school?
Yes, they are living in our communities.
Oh, wow. Okay. Do they go to your school or do they go to a separate school?
No, because no, they don't go with us to school. They have an afternoon sessions.
Okay, good. Turkey, go ahead. They want to ask a few questions, Turkey. Then Dr. Fetzer. Turkey, go ahead.
How do your people treat refugees?
Please, can you repeat?
How do your people treat refugees?
Yeah. How do your people treat the refugees?
Good. We welcome them in our homes, but we are generous with them. But other countries, they weren't like this. They put them in tents, our homes, our schools.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Turkey?
No.
Or Dr. Fetzer?
No other questions.
Okay.
I'm just overwhelmed with the compassionate support shown by both Lebanon and Turkey toward this cultural and humanitarian catastrophe, Mike.
Yeah, it's, I know quite a few of my friends are Lebanese, and hearing about some of the situation, it's just fantastic. Yeah, the Turkish school is going to be closing, so they're going to be leaving. So thank you so much today for Turkey, and we're going to continue on it with Lebanon. Lebanon, did you have any more, or can we have Dr. Fetzer go now?
What did you say?
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead. Did you have any more to show us, or can we go ahead with our next speaker?
No, that's all.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, more thank you. We're going to listen to Dr. Fetzer here. Dr. Fetzer is a former professor at the University of Minnesota, and he's going to talk a little bit about American foreign policy, and he would love to have you ask questions when he's done. So I will put you guys on mute, and we will go. Go ahead, Dr. Fetzer.
I'm going to talk about the causation behind the cultural and humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East that has been so vividly described by the students from Turkey and from Lebanon, which requires returning to the events of 9/11, which were absolutely crucial in gaining an appreciation for what's taking place now in the Middle East. We had an alleged attack by 19 Islamic terrorists, 15 of whom were from Saudi Arabia, but most of whom have turned up alive and well, and the following day made contact with the British press. We had 4 flights allegedly in the air where the security team that was responsible at the 3 airports from which they departed was an Israeli firm, ICTS. We had, of course, the attacks in New York, at the Pentagon, the devastating damage. We had a plane allegedly crashing in Shanksville. Before the North Tower had collapsed, the national media were showing photographs of Palestinians rejoicing as though they were celebrating what was taking place in the United States. This turned out to be archival footage that they just happened to have at hand. It was pure propaganda intended to deflect attention onto the Palestinians. They even reported that the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine had taken responsibility, but that was complete nonsense. In fact, it was generally agreed there were only 2 agencies in the world that could have conducted these operations, the CIA and the Mossad. On 9/11, they were acting together in concert. To understand the origins of 9/11, you have to go back to a conference held in Jerusalem in a book that was published by Bibi Netanyahu in 1987 about terrorism, how the West can win, before the concept was even in the consciousness of the Western world. With a collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990, and the emergence of the think tank Project for a New American Century, they were suggesting that if the United States were to enter into the geopolitically sensitive region of the Middle East and exert diplomatic and military pressure outward, it would be possible to create a new American empire that would endure for the next 100 years. Hence the title of the think tank Project for a New American Century. Notice at the lower left, from rebuilding American defenses, the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. They went about arranging the new Pearl Harbor. We had many indications of Israeli complicity at the time, including the 5 so-called dancing Israelis who were observed at Liberty State Park across the Hudson River, filming the destruction of the Twin Towers, the attack on the World Trade Center. They would subsequently be arrested and incarcerated for 44 days before they were released by Michael Chertoff, who was an assistant to then Attorney General John Ashcroft, where Chertoff, like the vast majority of the members of the Project for a New American Century, were dual U.S.-American citizens. These guys went back to Israel. 3 of them went on Israeli television and explained they were there to document the destruction of the World Trade Center. That was blamed upon Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, but they had nothing to do with it. This was an event that was organized by the American government, especially the so-called neocons, who really are advocates and representatives of Israeli foreign policy, had nothing to do with the United States. Osama was merely a patsy. We had General Wesley Clark, who had served as the commanding general of NATO at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco on October 3rd, 2007, explained that after 9/11, the United States developed a plan to attack and take out the governments of 7 countries in the next 5 years, beginning with Iraq and Lebanon, ending with Syria and Iran. If it hasn't played out that way, it's not been for lack of trying. We know that because the situation in Syria proved so difficult, that the United States created ISIS. This was done when Michael Flynn was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Michael Flynn opposed the creation of ISIS, but it was supported by John Brennan, then the director of the CIA, by Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, and Barack Obama, President of the United States. Judicial Watch was able to obtain documents showing that the United States had created, the Defense Intelligence Agency had created ISIS, or the Islamic State, in 2012 in order to bring pressure upon Syria and to destabilize the administration of Bashar al-Assad. We have many, many proofs of ISIS and U.S. involvement there. The Iraqi army, for example, down 2 UK planes carrying weapons for ISIS. The Iraqi Popular Forces shot down a U.S. helicopter that was bringing supplies to the Islamic State. We have many members of the Islamic State sporting U.S. Army tattoos. We have the propaganda film for ISIS being made on a soundstage in Tel Aviv or even Hollywood. This was all manufactured. This was all propaganda. We even have John McCain, the American senator, in the company with al-Baghdadi, the purported head of ISIS. In fact, in Washington, ISIS is known as John McCain's army. The motive was to benefit Israel by taking out the modern Arab states that serve as a counterbalance to Israel's domination of the Middle East. Here's a map reflecting the extent to which the lands controlled by the Palestinians have disappeared since the state of Israel was created. Israel wants to expand to create the greater Israel of Zionist aspirations, which you can see defined by this map, which includes much of Syria, of Iraq, of Saudi Arabia, even Egypt. That is the Zionist dream. We have Saudi Arabia and the United States behind the Syrian conflict. Many experts and analysts have examined the problem. And of course, Israel is crucial to the entire enterprise. The Wall Street Journal reported that Israel and Saudi Arabia have been secretly giving money to ISIS in Syria. We have the Israelis have been providing medical care for ISIS. And the ISIS sex slave survivor has exposed a U.S. ally for running a global sex trafficking ring. This is all quite shocking and disgusting. Here's a crucial statement of the U.S.-Israeli goals in Syria. The initial Anglo-Zionist plan was to overthrow Assad and replace him with a Takfiri crazies, Daesh, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, ISIS. Call them what you want. Doing this would achieve the following goals. 1, bring down a strong secular Arab state along with its political structure, armed forces, and security services. 2, create total chaos and horror in Syria, justifying the creation of a security zone by Israel, not only in the Golan, but further north. 3, trigger a civil war in Lebanon by unleashing the Takfiri crazies against Hezbollah. 4, let the Takfiris and Hezbollah bleed each other to death, then create a security zone, but this time in Lebanon. 5, prevent the creation of a Shia axis between Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. 6, break up Syria along ethnic and religious lines. 7, create a Kurdistan which could then be used against Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. 8, make it possible for Israel to become the uncontested power broker in the Middle East and force the KSA, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, and others to have to go to Israel for any gas or oil pipeline project. 9, gradually isolate, threaten, subvert, and eventually attack Iran with a wide regional coalition of forces. 10, eliminate all center of Shia power in the Middle East. Lying behind these issues is a major problem, a conflict over 2 pipeline projects, which Turkey's Anadolu news agency, although government-run, is providing a remarkably clear and reliable diagrammatic description of the current status of the U.S. and fundamentalist Sunni versus Russia and Shia and non-fundamentalist Sunni sides in the current gas and oil wars in the Middle East, for control over territory in Syria, for construction of oil and gas pipelines through Syria supplying fuel to the world's largest energy market, Europe. Russia is now the dominant supplier of both oil and gas, but its ally Iran is a Shiite gas powerhouse that wants to share the market there, and Russia has no objection. Qatar is a Sunni gas powerhouse and wants to become the main supplier. And Saudi Arabia is a Sunni oil powerhouse, which wants to become a major supplier. But Saudi oil and Qatar gas would be pipelined through a secular-controlled Syria. And this is why the U.S. and its fundamentalist Sunni allies, the Saudis and Qataris, are using Al-Qaeda and other jihadists to conquer enough of a strip through Syria so that U.S. companies such as Halliburton will able safely to place pipelines there to be marketed in Europe by U.S. firms such as Exxon. So here we see the competing pipelines that are the root cause, together with Israeli aspirations to take out the modern Arab states that serve as a counterbalance of the ongoing catastrophic warfare in the Middle East that is causing the humanitarian and cultural crisis that has been so vividly described by the students from Turkey and from Lebanon. There's a plan to redraw the Middle East, project for a new Middle East that even involves creating a new nation, a free Kurdistan you see in the upper left, taking out segments of Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, and just happens to coincide with some of the most oil-rich areas of those 4 nations. Here you see a map of the Syrian civil war as of late 2017, where the yellow areas are under control by Kurdish forces and their allies, the red by the Syrian government. The U.S. declared the creation of a Kurdish terrorist border force in Syria to define the borders of Kurdistan as a move in the direction of redefining the region, which it ought to have been obvious was going to provoke a dramatic response from the nations whose land was going to be seized for this purpose, particularly Turkey, which has long regarded the Kurds as a terrorist group, who are seeking to undermine the Turkish government. The creation of this border zone was an opportunity for Erdogan to declare a war on the Turks. He's notified NATO of an imminent massive invasion of Syria to fight the Kurds, and it's taking place now. Turkish warplanes have begun the massive bombing of the US-backed Syrian Kurds. The TSK, Turkish Armed Forces, has started airborne operations where the Prime Minister has observed that 8 F-16 aircraft are involved in aerial sorties, which is ironic when one considers that Turkey is using US-made warplanes to bomb US-backed military organizations, which have been provided with weapons made in the USA. Turkey has demanded US forces leave Syria's Manbij immediately as Turkish and allied militant forces from the so-called Free Syrian Army advance further upon Kurdish positions in northern Syria. Turkey has called upon the United States to vacate its military bases in the Syrian district of Manbij. Speaking to reporters on Saturday, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said that Ankara is calling upon the U.S., its official ally in NATO, to cease any and all support to Syrian Kurdish forces and militias. The U.S. strategy in Syria has therefore been doomed by this war between Turkey and the Kurds. With ISIS all but eliminated from Syria, the U.S. has been trying to transition its strategy into an open-ended military presence with an eye toward picking a fight with Iran and imposing regime change on the Assad government at some point. That strategy looks to be in tatters today as Turkey's invasion of northern Syria seems to be changing the situation on the ground in such a way that the U.S. military presence may no longer be sustainable. Turkey's invasion is threatening to overrun all the Kurdish YPG territory. All of America's deployments in Syria are within the YPG territory, often embedded with YPG forces, thus setting the stage for a U.S. clash with Turkey as Turkey demands a U.S. withdrawal from Manbij, a YPG-held city. Manbij is the demand right now because it's the next target, but with Turkey telegraphing attacks on everywhere else in the country where the Kurds are located, the U.S. is going to be ordered out of all that territory, with Turkey still seething over U.S. support for the Kurds. They're probably not going to let them keep their troops deployed in the territory. Where this ends up is anyone's guess, as Turkey seems to be betting the U.S. will withdraw rather than risk a clash with another NATO member. And the U.S. seems to be struggling to figure out what to do next. Either way, the U.S. just keeping its troops stationed there and waiting for a chance to go after Iran and/or Assad is no longer an option. And if they want to stay in Syria at all, the U.S. is likely going to have to figure out something Turkey will accept at the expense of the Kurdish alliance. Israel, meanwhile, has declared it wants to work with Saudi Arabia to defeat Iran. Israel wants no competition from Iran for influence in the Middle East. The U.S. and Israel have signed a secret deal to cooperate against Iran. This is a catastrophic mistake, in my opinion, where Donald Trump has even bashed the Iran nuclear agreement, even though Iran ceased its work on the development of nuclear weapons already in 2003, when Saddam Hussein was taken out, which they had only been pursuing because of propaganda given by the United States that Saddam was seeking to develop nuclear weapons. Iran felt it had to defend itself. Once Saddam was gone, there was no need for the project. U.S. intelligence agencies all agreed in 2007 that Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons. Even the Mossad concurred in 2012, just weeks before Bibi Netanyahu went to the United Nations and declared precisely the opposite. Iran Even Haaretz has published Iran is not an existential threat to Israel, no matter what Netanyahu claims. It's all quite a ridiculous charade to claim that there's a threat from Iran, which is not existent. France has accused the US, Israel, and Saudi Arabia of attempting to spark war with Iran. No doubt this is well-founded, coming from the French president himself, who appears to be a very even-handed and well-balanced in his judgment about international affairs. There's an attempt taking place now to fabricate a war on Iran, just as we fabricated a war on Iraq. Iran's attorney general has named the CIA mastermind of the recent protests in Iran, which fell flat, completely unsuccessful, even though it was an attempt to replicate the coup in Iran in 1953, of which most Americans remain oblivious and ignorant to this day, where the United States engineered a coup to take out the democratically elected government of Iran that was run by Kermit Roosevelt, a cousin of Teddy Roosevelt. Most Americans think our relation with Iran only began in 1979, when there was a popular uprising to reestablish the Islamic Republic of Iran, and American employees at the embassy were taken hostage. But that was the Israeli people retaking control of their country after having endured an onslaught, a regime of terror under the Shah of Iran, who was imposed by the American government upon the Iranian people. We have the Iranian prosecutor pointing the finger at the CIA, Israel, and Saudi Arabia for the protests there. There's a shocking neocon plan to invade Iran to be paid for by Jewish oligarchs. This is just what the neocons wanted, the plan behind 9/11, get the United States involved in the Middle East. And while we declare we're there to protect the Syrian people, there's no foundation to it. We're not bringing freedom and democracy to Syria. Syria is already a democracy. Bashar al-Assad was democratically elected by the Syrian people. He enjoys over 80% support. Because of the purge going on in Syria, the Middle East is in a continued state of chaos. The near future is very difficult to predict, but we can be certain of this. Because of China's new Silk Road, because of China's ongoing economic development, including finding multiple pathways to establish commercial corridors with Europe, the ongoing struggle between the West and the East, where the West is waning in power and prestige, while the East, including China and Russia, are growing, which even includes ports in Pakistan and Iran in order to create a pipeline to transmit Chinese goods and products to the north, to Eurasia, to Russia, and to Europe. The situation is going to continue in a titanic struggle over the world economic system, where I have no doubt the West is, the United States in particular, is destined to lose, where the future lies with Russia, with China, and with Iran, and where Israel is going to turn out to be on the verge of extinction, notwithstanding its last efforts to keep the United States involved in wars in the Middle East, which Donald Trump was elected to end. He's keeping many of his campaign promises, but the one he most needs to adhere to is a promise to get the United States out of the Middle East, where, as he observed during his campaign, we have squandered $4.5 trillion with no benefit to the United States whatsoever, all on behalf of Israel, where the United States and Israel now have claimed the mantle of being the greatest terrorist nations in the world, a reputation they have earned and completely deserve. I'm very grateful to the students from Turkey and Lebanon for sharing their work with us. Their research was simply excellent in terms of what they have presented about the humanitarian and cultural crisis that is ensued because of United States involvement in the Middle East to benefit Israel. Mike, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity.
Oh, I thank you. I think Lebanon dropped, I think, because of the power issue going on and off. But this has been really amazing, and I really enjoyed your summary speech there, because it kind of puts everything in perspective a lot more, that this is going to be an ongoing problem for many years. And a lot of people here in the States don't realize how much it impacts. If 30% of your population and growing are refugees, or if you have 3.5 million there in Turkey, that you know, that's a horrible outcome for some people that are just deciding in boardrooms that just chess players, you know?
And I was very impressed with everything they explained about the support provided by Turkey and by Lebanon. These are very humane nations, Mike. I think that the quality of the people in the Middle East may be superior to, for example, the attitudes that prevail in the United States, which are much more selfish and self-centered. I was very impressed, even moved, by the presentations by the students from Turkey and from Lebanon, and I'm very grateful to you for having made me a part of this endeavor.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is great. I'm gonna send you an email today and tell you about a couple other things we're gonna be doing, because we got some really fantastic research we're doing on a couple things that you may enjoy. Because I've been watching some of your videos, and I think Lance has hit on something that that may, you know, like everything has precedence, correct? And I don't think that Kennedy might have been the first president that Mossad was after. It might even happen before the state of Israel.
I'm very interested to see what Lance has, Mike. Have you already sent the link or not yet?
I haven't sent the link yet. We were thinking about doing one of two things. The people in Turkey wanted to try to do it would be in the morning, or the people in Australia wanted to try to do something that would be afternoon. I don't know which would be better for you, but we're shooting for either February the 13th or February the 20th.
I need to grab my calendar. Shall I do that?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll stop recording now, so we'll.